If you are getting ready to check out for the weekend, I want you to know a couple of things here. In this video, we're going to talk about thunderstorm chances, of course. It is Florida, it is summer, it is hot, there are storms around, but there's going to be a big change in the timing of these storms heading into your weekend. So I want to give you an update on that for your plans if you're planning on doing anything this upcoming weekend of July 8th and 9th. You see it there, the heat. I have slightly kind of starred there. It's really not going to be cooler. It's just going to be less oppressive and less ugly, I think, for some of Central Florida, especially as we get into the first part of your weekend, because we're going to have an earlier start time to those storms. So again, that's why I want to give you a heads up here in this video. Onto the tropical front, we have a nice big plume of Saharan dust getting ready to push through the Gulf of Mexico. That includes the state of Florida. That should be here by Sunday in South Florida. Maybe a little bit later in the week for Central Florida, but that's going to have some big-time impacts on our storm chances as well going forward for the week ahead. So we are going to break all of that down. Hey, before we get into it, if you find this content helpful, give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. And if you do want to stay updated on all things weather in Florida, especially as we are in hurricane season, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. We would love that. We appreciate the support. All right, so we're going to start things off Friday evening, and we do have a couple of thunderstorms. I've already seen storms around Central Florida, specifically earlier in the afternoon. That was to be expected. There's 6 o'clock for you with some scattered thunderstorms still around, just all kind of scattered. These will push off the Atlantic coast as we get into your Friday evening. This is what I'm talking about now. Saturday morning, here's 10 o'clock. If you have any soccer games, soccer practices to go to, or anything like that, or just hanging out early, be mindful that I do think there's going to be some scattered thunderstorms, especially west of Orlando, and then especially northwest of I-4 by 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Then those kind of expand through the early afternoon. So this is going to do a couple of things. I'm going to show you the heat index forecast coming up in just 1 second, but with extra clouds around, with extra rain chances, or the higher rain chances, we're not going to be as oppressive as we move into Saturday afternoon. It is still going to be hot. It's still going to be ugly, and I'll show you that in just 1 second, but it's at least going to help. It's been a super awful last week or two when you're talking about the heat in Florida. There's 11 o'clock on your Saturday evening. I think most of those storms wind down, and we'll kind of do it all again, but we'll start to get back into that routine. So this is kind of like a one-day change here in terms of your storm timeline. There's going to be a bigger deal happening because of that Saharan dust next week. Stick around towards the end of the video for that neurotropics update. All right, so the future heat index. This is for Saturday afternoon, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at this. Look how cool it is. It's still going to be humid. It's still going to be hot. It's going to be oppressive. But look at that. It feels like temperatures are in the 80s in some spots by Saturday afternoon because of the rain. Now notice closer to the coast where I do think will be drier for longer. We're still pushing the century mark. And then after we clear out all that rain and scour out some of that cloud cover that lingers behind some of those storms, you see what happens here. We get back to around 100. Now, it's still hot, of course. It's Florida. It's summertime. It's July. We really don't get a break in this heat. You won't know it if you lived here long enough until we get like to late October or November with those cold fronts. So this is not a cold front. It's just going to be the start time earlier with the thunderstorms. Now watch what happens as we get into Sunday. We get back into our more routine timing later on into the afternoon, so that allows us to heat back up again, and that heat index closes in more like 100 to 105. So again, I know the heat index of 100 is still really hot, but it's better than 110 to 115 for where we've been for the past couple of days. So that's all I'm saying. And then once we get into Monday, hot again, more like 100 to 105. I want to show you here kind of the wide view of storm chances going into the weekend. Again, here is 6 o'clock on Friday, and you see the scattered thunderstorms hanging tight across most of the Florida Peninsula for the evening. And this early start time just doesn't impact Central Florida either. It's going to start to impact extreme Southwest Florida around Naples, maybe Fort Myers, with a few early morning scattered thunderstorms coming off of the Gulf of Mexico. And you see that really increase. There's 4 o'clock on your Saturday afternoon. So another round coming through for Central Florida. Fort Pierce, we're dodging some scattered storms. Same for us in Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Fort Myers up to Sarasota and St. Pete. We're going to see some of that as well. And then that's going to continue into your Saturday evening. But really by 8, 9 o'clock, most of the action is winding back down. That is 10 o'clock on your Saturday evening. And again, most of us are going to be dry. On to the dust. Now, one of the things the dust does, if the concentration is right, if there's the density of the dust, if you will, is right, This does help to enhance the sunrises and sunsets. There's extra particulate matter in the atmosphere for the sunlight to be reflected, so you get some of those brighter oranges and reds. If it's too thick, though, then we get that dim, dull, sunny afternoon, that milky or filtered sunshine. So I think at least early on Sunday and Monday, it might be that perfect concentration before it thickens up. Certainly, it's really going to thicken up next week, but there you go on Monday. Most of us are kind of engulfed in this dust plume. Now, the dust hangs out about 15 to 20,000 feet above your head, so this is not going to be like a giant dust storm like you would see out in the desert or in the southwest U.S. or anything like that. You're really going to be hard-pressed to see anything going on unless we have that dull kind of sunshine in the afternoon. That's 3 o'clock on Monday, and you see most of the state of Florida being impacted by this dust one way or another. Now, what this dust is going to do, this is also known as the Saharan air layer. So it's not just dust, it's the air from the Saharan desert coming over too. One of its characteristics is it being very, very dry. So that is the one reason why typically when this dust is nice and prolific, like it's going to be out in the tropics, out in the Atlantic, tropical systems have a real hard time getting going because the air is dry, there's dust. It's just not a good environment for those storms. So that's typically good news, again, in the Atlantic. But here we go, getting into Monday. What this dry, dusty air is also going to do is help to limit thunderstorm activity. So storm chances don't go to 0 next week, but I do think the coverage of these storms are going to be less. So rain chances are going to be hovering likely closer to 30%, maybe even lower as we get into your Monday, Tuesday, and week ahead. So that's going to mean maybe watering the lawn a little bit more, or at least aggressively slowing down the growth of your lawn as we're going to shut off the water spigot for just a little bit. I don't think, again, it completely goes dry, but nonetheless, it is going to be a drier week. Emphasis on the On to the tropics. Again, from the perspective from these tropical waves that are out there, we are not expecting any development. There are a few waves out there. There's one right here entering the Caribbean. That's going to bring them some heavier rain. If you do want an update on that, I have a longer tropical update that I will include in the description of this video. There's also this little swirl way out here. Again, that is non-tropical in nature. That is not going to materialize any. And if it were to get a highlight by the National Hurricane Center over the next few days, those waters are jet fuel up there. So it's not going to impact Florida. So anything that gets highlighted in the near future, which again, it's going to be hard pressed to find anything getting highlighted in the near future, nothing's impacting Florida. In the main development region, right in through here, look at how clear it is. This is where that secondary plume of Saharan dust resides, and that is keeping things nice and sunny, nice and clear, all through that main development region where Brett and Cindy uncharacteristically developed earlier in June. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. Again, a weird, or at least a different storm pattern as we get into the start of the weekend. Then we're talking about lower storm chances next week. If you found this content helpful, give it a thumbs up. It does help us out a lot. And again, if you want to stay updated on all things Florida weather, including the tropics, hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you next time.